For more debates, updates, and bonus content, sign up at thebigconversation.show.
The death of Judas Iscariot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Judas, in Mark, Luke, and John, Judas, nothing happens to him after, he just disappears.
Okay.
In Matthew's gospel, Judas hangs himself.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is he goes, he feels remorse about what he's done. He's betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He tries to return the 30 pieces. The high priest won't take it, so he throws them down in the temple and goes off and hangs himself. And the priests then say, oh, we've got these 30 pieces of silver. We can't put them back in the treasury because it's blood money. It's used to betray blood. And so they go off and they buy a field, and it's called the Field of Blood because it's purchased with blood money after Judas has hanged himself. Luke also wrote the book of Acts, as we were saying. And in chapter 1, there's a second account of Judas' death. In this account, what happens is there's nothing about Judas hanging himself, nothing about the priest buying the field. In this account, Judas goes and buys the field before he dies, and he doesn't hang himself. He somehow falls head first, and his intestines break open and bleed all over the ground. Mm-hmm. And so the people in Jerusalem start calling this the Field of Blood because Judas bled all over it.
So
those two accounts cannot be reconciled.
Okay. So before we hear Peter's response to that, is the issue then that, you know, we don't know what happened to Judas at all because these accounts, as far as you can see?
I think we can know some things.
Okay.
I think there really was a Judas. I think that he really did betray Jesus to the authorities, and I think he probably came to some kind of untimely death that was somehow connected with a field in Jerusalem.
But as to reconciling these two stories, they're just different.
But if you want to read Matthew and say, yes, that's what really happened, or if you want to read Acts, that's what really happened.
It's helpful to drill down on a specific example sometimes. Sure. So how do you read these two accounts of Judas's death?
Sure. I'd like to come to that first, but I hope also to come back on the whole question of oral tradition.
Okay,
at
we will.
stage.
We will. Yes.
So I think it's really interesting that we got these two accounts, and Bart mentioned two things as he went through the account in Acts. One is he used the word somehow, that Judas somehow, and the phrase is, became headlong. Well, that to me is just crying out for some more details. We need to explain. We need some sort of like vertical elevation. Oh, Matthew has vertical elevation because he has to hang himself. So I'd want to say that the account in Acts is crying out for a bit more. And the other issue we got is his intestines. How on earth do his intestines start bursting forth? I mean, like, that wouldn't normally happen if you just
simply
fall.
fell over in
so
a field,
in other words, I'd want to say, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Now, as for...
So how did it happen?
So how did it happen? I'd want to say, I think you can put the two together. Probably the data are underdetermined, as in that is, I can't... there would be multiple scenarios that would fit those.
Give me one.
Let's say someone hangs, and then the rope snaps, and you know after they're dead, and their entrails burst out. I'm not a medic on that, but you know.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask this: if somebody's hanging and the rope snaps, that's happened before. How do they fall?
Down.
Do they fall head first?
Well, it depends what their feet.
Does it depend?
Yes, it does. It depends what they're hanging over.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you're hanging over something and there's a rock forward and you're going to trip on it and you go head forward, I mean, like, these things can happen. I don't know.
It sounds like we're doing CSI here, you know,
I mean, like,
crime scene investigation.
I just think the data's underdetermined.
Let me just say this. Yeah, it's underdetermined. So to reconcile it, you have to come up with a completely implausible scenario to reconcile it. You can reconcile anything. Let me give you an example how you can reconcile anything. Right now in America, they're celebrating the moon landing. 1 out of 6 Americans don't think there was a moon landing. So you have people say there was not a moon landing, and people say there was a moon landing. And so, well, how do you, those two, and most human beings would say, well, you know, it either is this or it's not that. If you really want to, you could say, oh, no, you can reconcile that because actually they first didn't get there, and so they didn't land, but then they circled around the earth again and went back, and they landed the second time. So there wasn't, and there was. Now, you could do that, but, like, is it really the best explanation?
But I mean, firstly, I'd want to ask, how important is it that we know the exact way in which Judas met his fate? And secondly, are you essentially trying to come up with some theory that matches two impossible
I'm
matching
not
stories?
trying to say we know exactly how things happened. I think there are multiple ways. I'm trying to use charity.